Shishadripuram temple. Baldeva Prabhu ki jai, Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Lord Jagannath ki jai, Gaur Nitai ki jai, Panch Tattva ki jai, Bhakt Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Lord Narsinga Deva ki jai, Mata Lakshmi ki jai, Lord Parshurama ki jai, Lord Vaman Dev ki jai. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Gauranga ki jai. We'll say our prayers. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desatarane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we are in chapter 2 now. We're still in chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Today we'll be reading the shloka 15 of 2nd chapter. Yam hina vyathayanti ete purusham purushar sabha sama dukkha sukham dhiram so amrit tattvaya kalpate. Translation. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So in this chapter, Arjuna and the Pandavas and the Kauravas, they are there in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, ready to fight. The battle has not begun, as in they have not started fighting, but they are there to fight. And the situation is still that Arjuna is in a state of perplexion. I mean, he's there to fight, but now kind of he's having second thoughts, or there is a delay. So there is a discussion between Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is acting as his guru, and Arjuna, who is a warrior, who is a Kshatriya, who is Pandava, and who is acting as a disciple there. And Krishna is telling him this shloka. So Srila Prabhupada in this context gives another example from Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bharat Maharajas. So it was a very dangerous for Bharat Maharaja to sacrifice all his regulative principles, that is his duty, simply to take care of an animal, which in here is referred to as young deer. So Bharat Maharaja was at a very elevated spiritual stage, and he was progressing, he had progressed, but he got attached compassion for a young deer. So the principles enunciated in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada says that the principles enunciated in Bhagavad Gita, especially this shloka, should be followed. Yam hina vyathayanti ete purusham purushar sabha. As far as the material body is concerned, we cannot do anything for anyone when it comes to material body. The best what you can do is, if it's a person, a human, you can help him progress in spiritual consciousness. So by the grace of Krishna, if you are empowered, or if you have progressed, if you are a senior person and you have progressed in spiritual Krishna consciousness, you may raise that person's consciousness, a spiritual consciousness, if you yourself are following rules and regulations. But at any given time, you should never do anything which will stop your spiritual activities or stop your spiritual progress. That is very dangerous. When you become concerned about bodily comforts of another person, gross bodily comforts of another person, then that person is at the risk of himself or herself falling into a very dangerous position by stopping his or her spiritual progress. So the platform of Paramahamsa is described here in this shloka. Sama dukkha sukham dhiram, so amritatvaya kalpate. When one is callous to all duality which this material world presents, the happiness and distress of this material world, one is fit for amritatva. What is that? Eternal life, liberation. So Bharat Maharaja, although very determined to finish his business in this material world, and he did not care at all about the world of duality, he was complete in Krishna consciousness and was oblivious to good and evil or the duality, happiness and distress offered by this material world. But he got attached, developed so much compassion for the cross body of a deer, taking too much care of the comfort. And at the time of leaving the body, one has to remember Krishna. That is the highest stage of progress, right? So we should avoid getting attached to bodily, you know, bodily state of a person. Rather, consider see everything as a spirit soul, and if possible you want to help, then you help that person grow spiritually, get more Krishna conscious. So amritatva, in this material world we are put into mritatva, subject to birth, death, old age and disease. This is what this material world offers us. But Srila Prabhupada says that there is another position which is a better position or a higher position, where there is no birth, no death, old age or disease. That is a spiritual, in the spiritual world, that is what we should strive for. So if a person is intelligent, he will take that position where there is no birth, no death, no old age, no disease, and that is called amritattva, eternal life, liberation. So amritatvaya kalpate, every living being is amrita by spiritual nature, by constitutional position. The original state of that soul is that one cannot be subjected to birth, death, old age and disease, and that is what we should strive for, and this is what Krishna is trying to do. So just like we know that Krishna is Satchitananda, as mentioned in Brahma Samhita, he is eternal, blissful, knowledgeable. Similarly, we being part and parcel of Krishna, we are also of the same quality, although not quantity. He is quantitatively we are infinitesimal, but quality wise we are same by nature, and we have accepted this inferior position of birth, death, old age and disease on account of our association with this material world. So Srila Prabhupada says that in the beginning it seems to be very difficult, whereas it is actually not difficult. Just because we are so habituated, we've experienced this difficulty, switching from material, thinking materially to progressing spiritually, and that we are spiritual soul and not material gross body. So that is, now we have become conditioned to think like that and experience like that, and if not checked, then it will get worse and we will become more material and ignorant. So if you are actually anxious and serious to stop this birth and death, repetition of birth and death, that we have to take to Krishna consciousness, because without Krishna consciousness nobody can stop this repetition of birth and death. So therefore Krishna advises in this verse to referring to Arjuna as best of men, accept this little difficulty. So all these so-called difficulties, if they do not bother or give any pain to a person, then all these difficulties so that person who is for example, the person who is habituated to smoking, but when he takes to spiritual life, he has to follow and he is forbidden to smoke. And similarly, somebody might have exposure to, or there is a possibility of illicit sex, but if person controls him or her from doing this wrong, then although he might be experiencing some feeling difficulty, but if he sticks to this principle, then he becomes fit for going back to home, back to Godhead, right? So here dhira is mentioned. Dhira means that although there is a cause of disturbance, one is not disturbed. Example given again, like cigarette or illicit sex. But although there is a facility, there is an option but that person controls, he does not do, knowing that he has to progress spiritually, he takes this, then that person is called dhira, because he knowingly, although there is a possibility or there is an option, but that person does not go for it, or is not disturbed or perturbed, but he sticks to his spiritual progress, that person is called dhira. That person is not agitated or disturbed, being in that present state. So that is how it is. So sama dukkha sukham dhiram, and he controls all that duality. So as soon as one becomes dhira, sober, then these material pains and pleasure don't disturb that person. That is the state. Then that person becomes fit. Fit for what? Becoming immortal. That is going back to his original spiritual state, going back to the spiritual world. So by nature, we know that everyone is immortal. A spirit soul is immortal. But we have fallen into this material condition, and we think that we are material. We think or feel that we are this cross body. So that is mortal state, material state. So we are disturbed by the bodily concepts of life. All of us, when we are in this material world, now we are trying to develop this knowledge and be in this constant state of spiritual realization that we are not the body, we are the soul. So everyone is, otherwise everyone is busy to relieve his bodily pains and and experience pleasures. All discomforts we want to get rid of, and we want to experience pleasure in this material body. So everybody in this material world is striving for it, trying for it. So but this cannot be stopped by any material science. It is not possible in this material world. So only Krishna consciousness is the real solution. So we should not be disturbed by these temporary pains and pleasures. These are all temporary relief if you try to get away with this bodily pain. So in this material world, that there is no this material science does not provide us this solution to this birth, death, old age and disease. Only Krishna consciousness can. So the purpose of Krishna trying to teach this to Arjuna is because now Arjuna was very much perplexed how he would live killing all his kinsmen, brothers. So Krishna wanted to point out that your brothers, your grandfather, they will not die. As we change our dress, similarly, we also change our bodies. There is nothing to lament about it. They will simply transfer from one body to another. So if we understand this, na vithayanti, and you are not disturbed by these changes, sa amrit tattvaya kalpate, then he is making progress, real progress, spiritual progress, and which means he is now progressing towards his or her eternal life. Spiritual life means eternal, blissful life of knowledge. So this is what Krishna is trying to tell to Arjuna to remove his doubt. And he's addressing him as best of men. Best of men should not be in this state of material duality. He should be in a very Krishna conscious state. So Krishna is now trying to remove this illusion of Arjuna. Hare Krishna. So I would like to thank you all for joining for this morning chanting and book reading, shloka reading session. We'll continue again, meet tomorrow and continue with the same process. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.